Well, hey everybody, it's a little bit different video today. I'm on the road headed to Mississippi to go to a birthday party. I wanted to do a quick intro, tell everybody, hey, welcome. Check out the beautiful scenery that's going by the window. Got the trailer behind me. So just tooling along in my Chevrolet, as they say. Some of you know the reference to that song, and some of you won't. But man, we're getting closer and closer. Every day we're getting closer to where we can meet with one another in person. Hope the background noise isn't too much in the truck. We'll have to see how this video turns out. I'm sure Kendall can do his magic work with it and put something together that's at least viewable, maybe a little entertaining. You know, you get to see my pretty face. But I do want to welcome everybody. I do want to mention a little bit about everything that's going on today in this world that we live in. You know, there's a question that says, is everything falling apart or everything falling together? And I think sometimes you look at it, you got to realize that the answer to that question is yes and yes. So, just in general, we're told in Scripture that things are going to get worse, and we're told in Scripture that people are going to come to know the Lord. And in these times, I feel like this is something to where we all need to pray as much as possible and love one another as much as possible. And there's 33 one another's that I believe it speaks to how the church is supposed to interact with one another. See, there's another one another. And these include to carry one another's burdens, to love one another, pray for one another, provide shelter, food to one another, and all these different things that we're supposed to do. And then us as the church to care for the world and the generation that we're placed in. So if I can offer any encouragement with how crazy things are and what's going on is, man, take the opportunity to show one another in the church and one another in this world how much we care for each other, how much value we place on all those that are made in God's image. Not going to tie your time up too much before we get into the sermon. Obviously, I need to focus on driving. I'm a much better driver when I'm not talking to the video camera. But I do want to say I love each and every one of you. Can't wait for July 5th to get here. Can't wait to meet in person, sing and worship together. Have a time of just seeing the joy on each other's faces as we come before the Lord together in our church community. For those of you that are guests with us that aren't part of our membership, we really appreciate you watching these videos and listening to the sermons with us and worshiping with your family. Even though we're separate, we are the church. We're the church universal, and we're gathered together, even if it's in front of the screen. So, big shout out to all the Renascent members. Love you guys. Can't wait to see you guys. Kendall, sorry for the shaky video. It's a little bit of a bumpy road. Headed to see Jonas and Sarah Steele and their kids. For those of you that know Sarah and Jonas, hey Sarah and Jonas, shout out, mobile shout out. Just going to try to enjoy the rest of the Saturday that I've got. I want you guys to do the same as you watch the sermon on Sunday or Monday or whatever day you choose to watch it. Just again, love you guys, miss you guys, ready to get together. Bye.
We live in a microwave society. And by that, I don't just mean that everyone has a microwave, though I would guess that that's pretty close to true. I mean that we live in a society that believes that everything should be quick and readily available. I mean, think about it. We have hundreds of fast food options, and we still can't figure out where we want to go. We entertain ourselves with instantly streaming media that we can binge on at any time of the day, no matter where we are, when it is. In fact, we don't even have to wait to get in front of a TV because we can stream it, any of our desired entertainment, we can stream directly into our hands through our phones. If we have a question, we can use those phones to ask Google or Siri for an instant answer for what that question is. I mean, if you have something that you think about, you just want to look it up, you have that option. It's instant. And speaking of our phones, I mean, we seem to think that we can't live without the instant access to anyone else and everyone else in our circle of family and friends through things like texting and emailing and social media. We believe in quick and easy access to pretty much everything in our lives. Because we have this desire, because so much of what we want in life is, in fact, so instantly and readily available to us, we've become a society that really isn't willing to put in the work to fix anything that breaks anymore. I mean, if something breaks, instead of just trying to fix it, instead of doing the research and taking the time and putting in the effort, we just discard it and we get a new one. I mean, why put in the effort into fixing something when I can replace it with next day shipping? Whether it's a broken phone or a broken marriage, we just aren't willing to put in the effort into hardly anything anymore. We've convinced ourselves that most stuff just isn't worth it. We even feel this way about our churches. I don't know if you've noticed this nasty trend, but if there's something that is not quite ideal about your church, never fear, because you can just pack up and go down the street to the next church. I mean, you've got hundreds to choose from. I'm sure it's going to be perfect when you get to that new church, because if something's wrong, we just aren't willing to put in the work to actually fix it or repair it, even in our churches. We've convinced ourselves that the effort just isn't worth the outcome. And I'm afraid to say that this is probably exactly what Satan wants us to think about pretty much everything, all parts of our lives. He wants us to believe that if something doesn't come quickly and easily, then it's just not worth our effort. We as a people, we are primed and ready to just throw in the towel and call it quits as soon as things get tough. And this is exactly what Satan wants. He wants men and women in our churches. He wants everyone, men, women, children, every single person to buy into the lie that it's just not worth the effort to fix stuff, to deal with difficulty, to endure hardship. In this week's passage, James actually tells us the exact opposite of what the devil wants you to believe. James tells us that some things are worth our effort. He tells us that some things are worth fighting for. He tells us that some things are worth enduring hardship and difficulty over, because after you've endured that difficulty, after you've endured that hardship, the result is well worth your efforts. So today what we're going to do is we're going to look at just a single verse. I know that I joked about that in the start of our James series. There's only a couple of times we're going to do this throughout this whole series. And today we're going to look at James chapter 1, verse 12. Just one verse, and it reads this: "Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial. For when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life which God has promised to those who love him." James begins by describing to us what a blessed person looks like. A blessed person is one who remains steadfast under trial, is what he says. And according to this passage, the blessed person is blessed precisely because they stayed the course through these trials. Because they endured the difficulty, they're considered to be blessed. You're blessed because you put in the work. You endured the difficulty, you actually pressed on through the hardship, and so because of that, you reaped the benefits of putting in all that work. You endured, therefore, you're blessed. I remember when a former pastor of mine actually preached this passage. He compared staying the course to running a marathon. Now, this is a subject that I know very little about, obviously, because, running. But this was a subject that he actually knew a bit about, because marathons were something that he did. He enjoyed putting his body through hardship. I don't really understand it, but that was something that he did. And he ran several marathons himself. And in his sermon on this passage, he mentioned that during a marathon, there is a large number of people who begin the race with this great amount of excitement and vigor, and they're standing in the middle of this large throng of people, this huge crowd, and they're super excited because they're about to start their race. I mean, they're about to run a marathon. This is exciting, right? But after a few miles, the runners would spread out, and they would often find themselves with no one else around them. And my pastor friend, he actually pointed out that it was at these times that the person is most tempted to give up. This is when the person is most tempted to stop moving forward, or even worse, to cheat and maybe cut off a little bit of the track. I remember him saying that it's at those points when the runner has to make a decision about what's most important to them. Do you press on? Do you finish? Do you keep going, or do you do something else entirely? According to James, the person who actually hangs in there, even through those difficult times, the one who makes it work, the one who presses on through the race, that's the person who is blessed by God. And I would bet that there are some people who are watching this video today who are probably pretty close, maybe even ready to throw in the towel on something. I mean, we've been running a pretty trying and difficult race this year. If anybody had guessed what 2020 was going to be like, I doubt very seriously that anybody would have picked this. I mean, I know how discouraging it can be to look around you and kind of find yourself seemingly alone in the midst of some of the craziest difficulties of your life. Can I encourage you today to just maybe keep going, to make it through? Can I encourage you today to keep pressing forward? Let me encourage you to persevere through the tough times and make it through this race that we are facing right now. It's definitely not something that we expected, but I believe that according to this passage, we have everything we need in order to press on. There is a blessing that is waiting for us on the other end of this. And the Lord is standing at the other end of this race, and he is waiting for us, and he is saying, come on, I've got something for you at the end. And that's what James wants us to see in this passage. According to James, the person who hangs in there, the one who stays the course even through the difficult times, the one who makes it work and just presses on through the difficulty of the race, that's the person who is blessed by God. And so today I want to encourage you to do that. I want to encourage you in your difficulty to press on. And I'd like to spend some time asking ourselves how we can do that, how we're supposed to stay the course through these difficult times in life. Luckily for us, there's a whole lot of good stuff in this just single verse. James actually gives us a few things that we're supposed to remember, truths that we're supposed to remember in this verse that will help us to press on toward that hope that God has prepared for us at the end of the race. James tells us 3 truths in this passage that I feel like we're supposed to remember as we press on through the difficulties. And don't just throw up our hands and say, you know what, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to give up. I'm gonna, I tried this Christian thing. I tried the church scene. I tried this, but it didn't work for me. Or maybe I tried this church and it didn't work. Or maybe I tried, this particular style and it didn't work. And I'm just ready to throw up my hands and try something different. I think James gives us 3 truths in this passage to help us to remember as we press on through the difficulties. And those are this. First, he tells us that we need to remember that we've already been approved by God. Look back at verse 12. In verse 12, James says, "Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life which God has promised to those who love him." This word that's translated here as stood the test is actually a really rich word in the original language. It carries a connotation of someone who's receiving approval after being put through the fire, being put through the ringer. Specifically, it means something it's proven itself to be strong enough to withstand the test of fire. So you stick it into the furnace, it comes out, and it proves that it's stronger than that fire. And that's all kind of encompassed in this word that's used here. This word is used a couple of other places in the Bible, and you can compare it to over in it's 2 Timothy chapter 2. You can see another instance of it being used and actually learn a little bit more from this passage. In 2 Timothy 2:15, Timothy was encouraged by Paul to do your best to present yourself to God as one approved. Same word, one who's tested, one who's been proven to be worthy of the test. So he says, Paul says to Timothy, do your best to present yourself to God as one approved, a worker who has no need to be ashamed, rightly handling the word of truth. It's the exact same word. When you pass the test, you're approved. When you go through the test and you show that you've got more strength than the test itself, that means you've passed. You've been approved. You've shown yourself to be able to handle the strain of the test. And so you know that you can handle whatever else is to come because you've passed the test. You know that you can handle the difficulties. It's kind of like getting your driver's license or meeting your girlfriend's parents for the first time. You're worried about the difficulty, but once you get through it, you've been approved. I remember when I met my in-laws for the first time. They were actually vacationing in Gulf Shores, and I drove down the short distance from Mobile to see Erin and to meet her parents. And I'll be honest with you guys, I'm usually pretty good with nerves, but I was an absolute nervous wreck during this trip. I was quiet, if you can believe that. I didn't talk hardly at all. I wasn't trying to be witty. I wasn't trying to be funny. No comments are necessary there. I was just a bundle of nerves. And Erin tells me now after that trip that her family all thought that I was super boring. Which, again, I don't need any snide comments from you guys, but I went through that whole process of going down and hoping that I would be approved, and I was incredibly worried. But now we're 16 years almost into our marriage, and they consider me to be their son. I mean, I am their son. How did I get to this place? It's pretty simple. I passed the test. I was approved. They accepted me. They decided that I was good enough for their daughter and therefore good enough for them. I was approved. Do you ever worry that you're just not good enough? Do you ever worry that you're not going to be good enough specifically for God? You think you're not going to be good enough to make God happy with your life or to make him look down at you and say, well done? Let me let you in on a little secret about why my wife's parents approved of me. It wasn't because they discovered that in meeting me that I was some super awesome guy who had all of his stuff together. I know that you guys think that about me. That wasn't what they thought. It was because I'd already been approved by their daughter. I was good enough for her, so I was good enough for them. I didn't have to do anything that day other than stick my foot in my mouth quite a few times. All I had to do was just ride the wave that I had already been chosen by their daughter. I was already approved. I was already approved. And I have good news for you. Your approval by God is not based on your performance. It's not based on the fact that you have done something that somehow earns you the right to say, God looks at you and says, yeah, good job, you made it. It's based completely on the fact that you've already been approved. You've already been chosen and approved by God's Son, by Jesus. You are already approved. The work that Jesus did for you on the cross has already sealed your approval in God's eyes. Because of Jesus, you're approved by God. You don't have to worry about it anymore. You don't have to be a nervous wreck when you go before God. You go before him with boldness because of Jesus. How wonderful will it be to one day hear those words, well done, good and faithful servant. How good will it be to know that because of Jesus' work in us, God considers us to have already passed the test. I think that's going to be such a sweet reward when we get to heaven. James tells us to remember this fact. Remember that we've already been approved. Remember that when you face trials in your life. When things get difficult, rest on the truth that you've already got God's approval. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to do something special to be approved by God. You've already received God's approval, and that is enough to help you press through the difficult times in your life. That's not the only truth that James tells us in this passage. He asks us to remember that we've already been approved by God, but he also says, remember that you've already won in God's eyes. This is similar to the first thought, but there's a subtle difference here. The idea of approval is something that very much goes along with the idea of winning. But look at what James says in this passage, and I'll show you what I mean by how there's a subtle difference. He says that for when he has stood the test, that's the approval. After that, it says he will receive the crown of life which God has promised to those who love him. James says when we've been approved, we receive this crown of life. Now, for most people in the modern Western world, the word crown, it's going to carry a very particular connotation. It often sends our minds to pictures of golden gem-studded circlets that adorn the heads of like a regal king or a queen or somebody like a prince. And we think of those type of crowns, the really, really gaudy, metal, beautiful type of crowns. But that wasn't the image that would have come to mind for the vast majority of James's readers in the first century. For them, the first thought that they would have would probably have been the idea of a totally different crown. They would have thought of the laurel wreath that was given to the victor, to the winner in competitions like the Greek games, like the Olympics. The crown that was given to those who, through their endurance and their dedication and their hard work, they came out victorious in the competition that they were in. And this is actually the word or the idea of crown that's used in most of the times when the Bible talks about a crown. In the New Testament, we're looking at the idea of a victor's crown. It's not always the case, but it's often the case. Look over at 1 Corinthians 9 and I'll show you what I mean. In 1 Corinthians 9, Paul says to the church in Corinth, verse 24, he says, "Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one receives the prize? So run in such a way that you might obtain it. Every athlete exercises self-control in all things, but they do it to receive a perishable wreath." Same thing. But we, an imperishable. So we're told that what we receive when we run our race is an imperishable version of the thing that the victor receives in another race. It's the same word used over in James. The athletes compete to receive a crown. They work hard. They train themselves to work through the difficulty and the pain and all of the issues that they run into. They train themselves to overcome that in order to compete well and in the end to earn their prize at the end of their race. The difference here, according to James, is that in a race, only one person receives a crown. But in Christianity, every single one of us can be approved. There's no reason that all candidates could not pass the test. I know that I have an aversion to the idea of the participation trophy, but this is like the ultimate participation trophy. Every single person who runs the race of Christianity wins. There's no bell curve here. You're not graded on the merit of your endurance and yours alone. You're graded on the fact that Jesus chose you and he put you in the race. You can win. Every single one of us can win. And anyone who endures through the race passes the test. Once you've passed the test, then you receive the imperishable crown that's afforded to the victors. You become a winner in God's eyes. Do you ever view your life kind of as a struggle that you're fighting against? It's like you're fighting against an enemy that you can't seem to beat. Does it ever feel like that? I know that mine does. It feels like this constant struggle where it's like, man, I'm always continually being knocked down and just can't seem to overcome the difficulties that I'm facing in life. You ever feel that way? Let me encourage you today with this truth. This is a fight you can actually win. This is a race you can actually be a victor. You can be victorious in this race. In fact, it's already been won for you. All you have to do is just hang in there to realize it. Just hang in there. Anyone who is approved by God receives the victor's crown. But the question remains that, if that's the case, what exactly is this victor's crown? Thankfully, we don't have to look very far to find our answer on that. Because the answer is found in the final thing that James wants us to remember in order to persevere through difficult times in life. He told us to remember that we've already been approved and remember that we're already winners in God's eyes. The final thing is that we need to remember the reward that awaits us at the finish line. Look back at the verse that we've been in for one final time here. He says in the end of verse 12, he says, those who receive, who stand the test, they will receive the crown of life. For when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life, which God has promised to those who love him. According to James, the victor's reward is not just that you get this laurel wreath, but it represents something. It represents life. James uses this image of the crown to turn our minds to the picture of reward, but the reward is specific. He uses the word that follows to describe what that reward is. It's a reward, this crown is a reward of life. At the end of your race, when you win, at the finish line, what you get, according to James, is nothing less than life. This is an image that is used elsewhere in Scripture also. And by looking at other usages, we can actually find a pretty good understanding of what kind of life James is talking about here. So if you will, just bear with me for a second and look at James' statement to the church in Smyrna over in Revelation chapter 2. To that church in Revelation 2 verse 10, he said, "Do not fear what you are about to suffer." So we're talking about difficulties here. He says, you're going to go through difficulties. He says, "Behold, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison that you may be tested. And for 10 days you will have tribulation." There's all those difficulties we've been talking about in life. He says, "Be faithful unto death." So persevere all the way into death, and I will give you the crown of life. There it is again, that crown of life. Jesus tells the church to be faithful even unto death, and then they will receive the crown of life. It would be difficult to explain this usage of the term life if there wasn't some type of life after death. Because he says you don't get it until you die. Clearly, this term refers to eternal life. It refers to everlasting life in the presence of God. It refers to true life. This is not the shadow of life that we've experienced here in this life, but this is real life, true existence that can only come in the presence of the author of life himself. Though the term crown of life isn't necessarily used here, this is the idea is that there is this wonderful parallel in in another part of the New Testament. Sorry, I lost my brain there for a second. In 1 Peter, there's another instance where this exact idea is used without the exact term. And 1 Peter helps us to see this concept a little better and a little more clearly. So in 1 Peter 1, verse 6, this is what Peter wrote. He said, "In this you rejoice, though now for a little while, if necessary, you have been grieved by various trials, so that the tested genuineness of your faith, more precious than gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire," see, we're talking about the exact same stuff here, "may be found to result in praise and glory and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ." So we're talking about this idea of tests and difficulties and seeing how true your faith is. And in verse 8 he says, "Though you have not seen him, you love him. Though you do not now see him, you believe in him and rejoice with joy that is inexpressible and filled with glory, obtaining the outcome of your faith." That's the goal. That's the prize. Obtaining the prize, the salvation of your souls. Within the context of trials, Peter tells his readers that the goal is really simple. What you do here is remain steadfast in order to obtain the outcome of your faith, the goal, the prize, which is the salvation of your souls. We're called to remain steadfast in our faith because we know that the true outcome of faith goes way beyond pleasure in this life or difficulty in this life. That's the true outcome of our faith. It is in the life to come. Our faithful perseverance has eternal implications. We remain steadfast because true life awaits us on the other side of the finish line. That's worth fighting for. So these principles that are set forth in this verse, these truths that James shares, they're pretty simple. Perseverance brings God's approval. And that's not it's not that perseverance creates God's approval. It just leads you to God's approval because God's already approved you. It shows you God's approval. And then his approval brings on the result of that approval, which is the crown of life. You're a winner. And you experience, because of your win, really because of Jesus' win, you experience true life for eternity. That's worth remembering when we're running into temporary problems here in this life. That's worth reminding ourselves of when we face trials and difficulties, when things mess up here. It's worth remembering that the thing that awaits us on the other side is worth fighting for. According to James, the person who remembers these truths is the one who will really be blessed in this life. And when I say blessed, I don't mean the idea of you're going to have all the stuff that you want, that you're going to have all the kinds of things that you would want to brag about on social media with certain hashtags. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean, when I say blessing, I mean that you will have what you need to get through anything this life throws at you. You'll have what you need. And that brings us to the whole point of this sermon. And if I had to encapsulate it in one simple challenge, here it is. Hang in there. Hang in there. Just stay the course, guys. Hold on. Keep pressing. I know this life can be tough. I know right now is crazier than you've probably ever experienced. This year has been the weirdest year that you've ever experienced in your life. I get that. I know that this life has thrown curveball after curveball after curveball at you this year. I know that things right now are not ideal. It's tough. Life is tough. But I also know that God has given you everything you need in order to press on through these crazy times, through your circumstances. I know that he has given you what you need because he's given you himself. He's promised you a reward on the other end of these crazy times. He's promised you a reward on the other end of your circumstances. He's promised you himself and eternity with himself. So today, I just want to end with a simple challenge for you to hang in there. And I want to say a simple prayer for anybody out there who's going through tough times. And I'm going to include myself in this prayer because life has been somewhat overwhelming for me also lately. It's been crazy this year. I was never expecting to be sitting in this room preaching to a camera. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect life to be this way. And I certainly didn't expect all the stuff that's come along with it. But I know that God is good. And I know that God is faithful. And I know that he has given me everything I need to hang in there. And I know he's done the same for you. So I just want to pray for us today. I want to close out our time with a word of prayer. Would you join me? Father, I am so grateful that you show us your love in so many different ways. I'm grateful that you show us your love by reminding us of truth today, by reminding us of the fact that we already have your approval, reminding us of the fact that we are winners in your eyes, by reminding us of the fact that what we've won because of your work is an eternity with you. I pray, God, that those truths would help us to get through whatever this life throws at us. I pray for those sitting within the sound of my voice, God, that you would show them that they have everything that they need to endure. Don't let this life become so overwhelming that they throw in the towel. Help us to see that some things are worth fighting for. Help us to see, God, that the life that you have chosen for us is worth enduring. It's worth doing well. Help us to see, God, that sometimes the benefits that we reap are not immediate, but they are eternal. So give us the strength that we need, God, and help us to hang in there. We praise you that you've already given us yourself, and that is more than enough. We love you, God. Amen. Hang in there this week, guys. I only have a couple of announcements for you today, but they're all exciting. So here goes. We are officially meeting again in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from now, 2 Sundays from now, we will be meeting right here in this room, and I won't be alone, and it will be fantastic, and I cannot tell you how excited I am. On July the 5th at 10:30, right here in this room, we will have our first gathering back together in person, and I am so incredibly excited about it. It's going to be a different look than what you're used to, but that's okay. We're working out all the bugs and the kinks, and we're trying to figure out how to do it as well as we possibly can, and be able to meet together, and also to allow people who are not quite comfortable yet, or not comfortable quite yet, to come back together, to still be able to experience it through an online streaming opportunity. So we're working all that out so that you have the choice of either in person or streaming on Sunday morning, and we're hoping that it's going to work well. We'll see how it goes. Who knows? I mean, this life is crazy, and I'm certain that there's going to be bugs, but we'll deal with it. We'll press on. We will endure, because that's what we just talked about in the sermon. I do have one other announcement, though. So the 5th of July is 2 Sundays from now, but in roughly 6 days from now, on the 27th of June, sorry, I had to do my math because math am hard, and so am English hard. But on the Saturday coming up, we are going to be right here in this room. So in order to show you kind of what we're going to be doing, I thought we would go on a little field trip. So here we go. This is a behind the scenes look at how this magic is created. Sound effects and everything. Look how boring this looks. That's sad, right? I mean, this is the recording studio that we've had set up. We've had this lighting up pretty much the entirety of the quarantine. I have been up here sometimes by myself. Sometimes it's been me and Rick and Kendall. Sometimes it's just been Rick and Kendall. But I mean, this is some sadness right here, and I'm ready to fill this in. But more than that, I'm ready to fill these spaces in right here. These seats have been sadly empty, other than that one that's got Germex in it, for far too long. And I'm ready to have your smiling faces out here in these seats. Granted, they will be a little bit farther apart than they are right now. They will be spread throughout this room, and we will have people here in person singing with us. But in order to make that happen, we've got to clean this place up. We've got to take all this stuff and sanitize it, and those bathrooms that are back behind that wall need to be cleaned. The kitchen that's over there behind this wall needs to be cleaned. All the stuff that needs to happen over the course of the coming week it's a lot of stuff, but we know that with the right number of people up here, we can make it happen. So we're asking for your help. On the upcoming Saturday from roughly 8:30 until lunchtime, maybe right after. We're going to feed you, so you'll at least want to stay for lunch. We're going to be in here doing the deepest of deep cleans that you've ever seen in this place. We are going to be cleaning anything and everything in order to get it ready for the following Sunday. Now, I didn't show you, but there are bugs that have kind of crept in and are belly up around the room. I think Rick might have named one of them. We got to clean those. The bathrooms need to be cleaned in this building and in the other building, just because it's set for so long. We've got to do the floors. We've got to clean the chairs. We've got so much stuff that needs to happen. We need your help. So plan to be here for our next work day, which is this coming Saturday. We got so much done last week. I'm so proud of the small group of people that showed up. We need more this coming week. So
here's the thing about that statement. When we say more, that's not really what we mean. So after thinking about what he said, what we came to realize is that we don't need more, we just need a select few people, because it kind of goes against the idea of we want to get together to sanitize and be safe, and all those things that we want to emphasize as part of our reopening process may not occur if we just have a whole bunch of people show up all of a sudden. So after thinking about what he said and talking with Justin some more, we realized that it would be better if we could have a group of maybe 6 to 8 people who could show up, and we could specifically put them in different parts of the church buildings to clean those areas, so that we can still maintain social distancing, even in the cleaning process, which is something we want to emphasize, not just for our worship gatherings, but through the whole process of the church, all of our gatherings as a church. So what we're going to ask people to do is, if you are interested and available and you can help out with that, you can post below. If you're on our Facebook, watching this on Facebook, post below and let us know that you're available. Or you can reach out to one of us and let us know that you're available. And what we'll do is we'll get a group listing of people who are available to come and work, and we will get up and get in contact with you this week and let you know what you'll be doing and how you can help, and that we need you for this week. So like I said, need about 6 to 8 people who are available to do that and come up and spend a couple hours that morning really deep cleaning. So hopefully that hopefully that gives you some insight into our thinking process and a little clarity about what he was saying with that. So let's get back to it.
So we need as many people as can possibly come. And you might think, well, I'm not good at cleaning. You can be. We've got something for everybody. So plan on being up here. And from 8:30 until around lunchtime, again, we'll feed you, we'll buy the pizza, and it will be fun. We're going to have a good time, and we're going to get this place spotless so that when we do have our in-person worship gathering again, we're going to be ready. So plan to be here. We'll look forward to seeing you then. Have a good week. We love you guys. Blessings.